Oi, what's the best game where you get to eat pie? What's the best game where you play a dead guy? Aye? You'll find out in VG247's podcast. Here, what's the best game where you swing from a rope? And what's the best game where you batter the Pope? Assassin's Creed 2. Like I said, you will find out in this your podcast. Hello and welcome to VG247's Best Games Ever podcast, where we attempt to find the best game within a very specific category. For example, this week we're looking for the best game that lets you see the world. Video games are wonderful for digital tourism, often allowing us to visit far-flung places from our living rooms. They arguably offer the perfect kind of holiday for those of us who are jaded, decrepit, and shall we say, tired of life. Please welcome, once again, Tom Orry, Alex Donaldson.
I feel pretty jaded and decrepit myself this week.
Yeah, I mean, we're all jaded and decrepit. It wasn't singling you out, Tom. Why would you think that? And you'll have noticed, if you're watching the video already, that we have our very first guest from
the first guest
outside.
that's turned up.
First guest that's turned up, yeah.
We've got someone big, like someone from Polygon or something, or IGN. We got someone big.
He's pretty big. He's big in my world. It's Bertie Purchese from Eurogamer, isn't it?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me on the show.
It's an absolute pleasure, Bertie. I've been asking you to come on for a while, and I finally ground you down. We've been talking about having guests on. Bertie's the first one who said yes.
It's amazing that he's agreed to put this top of Eurogamer as well when it goes live.
Yeah. I mean, I hadn't mentioned that yet, but I was gonna, slide that into the DMs afterwards. But yeah, it's great of you to publish this on Eurogamer itself. I'm sure Tom will be fine with that. Other Tom, not our Tom. What is it with Toms? All right, so we're looking for the best game that offers a digital tourism experience, allows you to trot around the globe. This is inspired by the forthcoming release of Street Fighter 6. Street Fighter is, of course, a very classic globe-trotting experience, isn't it? You get to visit all these exotic locations and batter people in them, but you still get to visit the exotic locations, so it counts. But nobody has picked Street Fighter today, unless I don't think any.
Well, I felt like because if anyone was going to do it, it'd be me, right? And I felt like because it was in honor of Street Fighter, it felt wrong.
Yeah,
even though in many ways Street Fighter is totally the ultimate version of this.
Do you know, I've got it written down on my document here. So I was thinking, I had one, and I'll go with that one, but I've got Street Fighter written down because it suddenly occurred to me that it does show you lots of places around the world. Like Blanca's jetty.
And it's the music in Street Fighter. It's Yoko Shimomura just in Street Fighter 2 at least, just going crazy in channeling and to some extent ripping off some cultural songs from.
It's great though, isn't it? Because it's a flavour of that part of the world, very stereotyped, but condensed into one map, and you have to give someone a big whack of it straight away. Yeah,
you need a shot of that culture, like an espresso, because you're there for 2 minutes getting battered. So it's they need to get the point across so quickly. So it's just stereotype. Put a sitar in it, they're in India.
The thing is, I've been to Brazil and I haven't seen any green people with orange hair fighting on the jet. I haven't been to Brazil. It's a lie. I've lied already.
You've lied.
That's fine. You're allowed to lie on this. It's as long as you admit it.
Oh, thank God.
Speaking of lying, it is time to. Who should we go to first? We never let Tom go first these days.
Pick me. Pick me.
Because, Bertie, you are the guest, you can nominate yourself first. That's absolutely fine. What have you got for us? What is the best game that offers a global tourism experience? I can never remember what we actually titled them.
Okay, so you've probably guessed it because I'm wearing a jacket.
Yeah.
What do you mean you haven't? So this game, I'm a spy, obviously. And,
of course, obviously, yes, yeah.
So this...
As if that isn't what you normally wear.
This is a good one.
So this, from my memory anyway, is the first spy game. It's probably not the first spy game to do this at all, but
it's definitely not the first. But
in my memory, it is a spy game that lets you travel around the world, and more than that, when you're in these different places in the world, it gives you a themed sort of safe house to play around in, and you kind of open the cupboards and they double up as weapon racks and things like that, and they're all styled in again a bit like Street Fighter in the way you might expect, like ultra sort of stereotyped kind of ways. It's Alpha Protocol from Obsidian Development.
What a game! What a game!
That's a good one.
I was just
You're going to come into trouble later on with this, I feel, but carry on.
I was just looking through a Let's Play of this. That I had to look through like 70 videos or something. I forgot how long some of these games can be, but actually, it takes you around the world. I mean, it doesn't. Like you go to, so you've got Saudi Arabia. You get a little apartment in Saudi Arabia, and I remember it feeling quite sort of. It sounds stupid, but I remember it feeling quite hot in there. It was like sort of orangey and it had these like those little flowing sort of curtains. And I remember thinking, cool, I better get some chinos on. You know, it's pretty hot in here. And then you go to Rome, I think is the sort of middle one that you unlock. Rome was
you can do it in any order, right? I feel like.
Oh, can you?
I feel like that's a fit. And so if you try and do the hardest one first, because of how harsh the choice stuff is in that game, you can totally screw yourself because you can't make some of the choices. You know what I mean?
Completely forgot
I feel like that's the case.
That feels right, because I remember, I didn't see it in this Let's Play, but I remember seeing like a world map. Again, I love this because the world map is the way they go. You know, like in the game, it's just another location or whatever. But as soon as they present you a world map, you're like, hey, hold up, I'm traveling around the world. And Rome was like this sun-drenched kind of orangey double layer. It was quite a swish apartment as well. It had this sort of mezzanine layer where you later can get frisky with someone if you play your cards right. But Taipei was the third apartment you get, and this one was like a slightly beaten up sort of run down apartment. And after Rome, depending on what order you played it in, or there's one in Moscow as well, I should say, which was typically sort of dour and sleek and fairly charmless. You know, an American developer.
Yeah.
But the one in Taipei was run down, and you're like, oh, it's that sort of place you'd go on holiday and you go, Christ, we didn't look at this a bit more closely, did we? But then you go into the shower, and the shower goes down into like an underground base, and it's like spy fantasy everywhere. And it's even got a tunnel in there that when you got like a super bike or whatever at this point, and you can like belt out of the tunnel on your super bike. Yeah, you've got
like a bat cave.
Yeah,
in
exactly
Taipei.
that.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember that game taking me around the world. When I looked again just now, I was like, oh, well, actually, it's just sort of a variation of compounds in different areas. Some themed around, like, one of them's got like a Chinatown theme. One of them's got like desert theme. One of them's got crumbling ruins theme. So maybe
it's a bit like Mass Effect, isn't it? I think that was their template, right? It's like Mass
I would
Effect
say
1,
so, yeah.
You go to 4 different planets, don't you? Basically, and I think they do 4 different countries in the same way. Yeah.
It is Spy Effect essentially. Like you've got an apartment, and it's like that's the Normandy, and it's a great game.
Did it come out after Mass Effect? I can't remember what year it
did come out after Mass Effect.
And I think that was part of why it didn't get the success it deserved, because I don't know which one was first, but it came out very close to Mass Effect 2. And Alpha Protocol was quite a lot like the first Mass Effect, as in it was a bit janky, a bit of a weird action RPG. And this came out, I'm just looking at it now, so Alpha Protocol was May 2010, and I want to say Mass Effect 2 was April, I reckon. Yeah. I know it was January 2010, so it came out 5 months after Mass Effect 2 came out and had immaculate shooting, and so it got levered in reviews.
So that's interesting as well, because as well as the shooting being better in Mass Effect 2, what was also better was like the blocking during conversation scenes and stuff. So no, seriously, like this is pointed out to, like, I remember having a conversation about it back in the day, because like Dragon Age, the first Dragon Age came out around the same time as Mass Effect 2.
Oh my
didn't it?
God.
And it was much more Mass Effect 1.
Yeah. And it was like, you know, like Mass Effect 1 has all the conversations, and they're just fucking standing, everyone's just standing around, and it's just 2 shot, 1 shot, reverse shot, and it's like a George Lucas film, right? It's so boring in the way it's staged, but you know, like Mass Effect, they were figuring out how to do this stuff. And then Mass Effect 2 comes out, and like the conversation system has all these dynamic camera angles, and it's being shot by by someone who actually knows. Like, it's being shot by Jonathan Frakes, right? Mass Effect 2 is like Mass Effect directed by Jonathan Frakes, right? Like, it's just somebody who loves moving the camera.
You know
around.
who Jonathan Frakes is, Tom.
course I do. I've been friends with Jim for ages.
He's right there.
But
right, so
the funny thing is, the one thing that Alpha Protocol does better, even than Mass Effect 3 and later BioWare games, is the sense of pressure in that game when you're making decisions. It's got the countdown timer, and doing nothing is as viable an answer as doing something. And the sense of pressure where you're going, shit, do I shoot? Do I not shoot? Do I say something? Do I not?
It's incredible.
It's if Microsoft were going to bring back one IP, this would be the one.
You could see it being so good now, because of course now, like, fast forward a bit and you go to a game like Hitman, which has that same sort of fantasy now of taking you to all these different locations around the world, and it's gorgeous, and I think you get a much better sense of place in Hitman than you do in Alpha Protocol. But if you could see that being remade today, which is quite exciting for the new James Bond game they're making, of course, which is
absolutely
probably going to take us around the world in similar fashion. But if they did a new Alpha Protocol, which they probably won't, now I've said James Bond, I'm like, why would they compete against that, which is probably going to have some
you
sort of
hope
RPG.
that it kicks off a renaissance of spy games, right?
I would love Alpha Protocol too.
I think the issue has always been that Sega owned the IP, so if Microsoft wanted Obsidian to do it, they would have to go and buy the IP off Sega.
It's not like Microsoft to splash out on something.
Do you think they'd be blocked from buying Alpha Protocol?
No, they wouldn't, because Alpha Protocol is bad blocking.
You are?
You just said it has bad blocking. I wish someone had got that joke straight away.
I'm sorry. You just...
It was a good joke, Jim.
It was a good joke. I'm sorry, Tom. I ruined it for you. All right, okay. Listen, because Tom is clearly like annoyed by that, I'm still going to make him go last. All right, Alex, what have you picked for this topic? Bearing in mind that at this point, it looks like you're already thinking, "Oh, Bertie's got it."
Well, so the funny thing is, Bertie just mentioned Hitman, and I almost picked Hitman.
I mean,
because I definitely think that channels a lot of the same stuff as Alpha Protocol, and I think that's the exciting thing about Project 007 is one of my most anticipated games personally, and an element of that they have to get right is the globe-trotting element, which is expensive to do in games because it's expensive to create different environments, but I feel like they have to have that. I feel like, as grim as it sounds, they have to have all the terrible product placement. If he's not wearing the right watch and and such and such, and he's not drinking actual Bollinger, then it's not really a James Bond product. And so all that stuff's got to happen. Not just the big stuff like the Aston. So I'm really excited about that, and Hitman definitely scratches that itch. But obviously I got to thinking about the pandemic, and there was one game where genuinely I think for a good couple of weeks there, absolutely everybody did do a good amount of digital tourism. And that, of course, is Microsoft Flight Simulator.
Yeah.
The 2020 reboot.
I've got this written down as well.
Digital Earth. Yeah. The Digital Earth stuff. It's just, I remember legitimately paying for, this was before they started doing the world updates, paying for third-party add-ons in the store, or even external to the game that you would download and install that would improve landmark buildings around the world and stuff like that. I remember paying 10 quid to have a better looking London, and I remember streaming it on Discord and legitimately doing the thing of flying over all my friends' houses and ploughing my little Cessna into my mate's flat as he watched. And genuinely, when I think of digital tourism, we thought about globetrotting, right? And when we talk about digital tourism, my number one thought really is I think of Yakuza, because if you've ever been to Dotonbori or any of those areas of Japan, when you play Yakuza, it is uncanny sometimes how close it is to the real deal.
Can you
it's
swing
weird.
A bicycle around in the same way?
Not quite. I mean, it probably happens from time to time at 3 a.m. when some of the VARs start kicking out. But, no, they're very polite. But if you go to somewhere where there's a lot of tourists, I'm sorry it happens. But yeah, so I think of that, but then you don't travel, you don't globetrot. And then that thought leads me to Shenmue. And it's had Shenmue continued, chances are Ryo would have moved around the world a bit more. But as it stands, he only does Yokosuka and then Hong Kong and a little bit of it of mainland China. I'm convinced that series was going to end with him in America, because that's where his girlfriend goes at the end of the first game. And I was convinced that in game 8 they were going to reunite or whatever. But it led me to think of Shenmue. And so those are what I think of when I think of digital tourism. But in the end, when I think of globe-trotting, during the pandemic, I genuinely lived vicariously through Flight Sim to some degree. Did co-op stuff where I flew alongside friends on Discord. So you'd chat and you'd fly around and you'd, talking about the last time we'd been to Vegas, because me and my mates all love Vegas. We'd fly down the strip and it would trigger memories where we'd talk about we went to the bar that's down that road. Remember when such and such was sick over there, yada yada yada. All this stuff happens. And so for me, in terms of just experiencing a little bit of the world, it's just fabulous. And what's amazing is I obviously went, people who read the site religiously will remember that I went out to a museum of flight in Portland for the 30th anniversary of Flight Sim, where they announced a bunch of stuff, and they added the Spruce Goose to the game, which is a very famous World War II plane, the biggest plane ever made out of wood. Its wingspan is 2 747s. It's huge.
I love that you know this. I love that information is just there in your head.
Yeah, and it's an incredible. I got to go inside it. It's an amazing thing. But when we were there, obviously there was a lot of talk about the future of Flight Sim, and listening to those guys talk about it. And there's an interview on the site. You realise that that Digital Earth now is a long-term project for Microsoft, and it's they might do. In fact, they almost certainly will do. And they were coy about it in the way that developers are, but it was quite plain to me talking to them that they know how many expansions and updates they're going to do for this Flight Sim before they do a new Flight Sim. And they even outright said at one point, they were but by the time we do a new one, we'll be talking about new hardware. So they're looking at a timeline long term. But one thing that's going to be consistent is this Digital Earth, which is getting better all the time.
Yeah.
And I just think it's a wonderful, fabulous thing, this idea that you can fly over places that you remember, over your childhood home, whatever, and it's all going to grow and it's all going to get higher levels of fidelity. And the thing that really excites me is the concept that they've got this data now, but the world is ever changing. So, they will be in a position where in 20 years' time, they could probably literally give you a time slider and you could pick what year of New York you want to fly in from all the data sets they've got. And for me, that's just ultimate digital tourism, because it's not just aping the tourism you can do in real life, but they were saying it's a very real tool for seeing things that you can't see. If any big skyscrapers get knocked down or built, you'll be able to do a version of that. Yeah. I love it. So it had to be that for me.
I think it's incredible. So we did. I remember this over on Eurogamer, among the Eurogamer team. It was a big moment. Everyone was talking about experiencing Flight Simulator, and I'm fairly sure we did some sort of piece where we were asking everyone about their Flight Simulator memories, because that game more than any other game had this unique power to pull in observers or passers by, and they would immediately be fly over X place that I recognize. And what was so nice about having the real world data in it is that so my partner is Bulgarian, and Bulgaria hasn't been featured in many video games, right? And if it has, it's probably a vampire game or something like that.
Yeah.
So as soon as we did it, we loaded up. We went to Sofia Airport and then flew over to her hometown, which is a small town. And it was just this. And as we were doing, I visited her hometown, and we could see kind of the roads we'd taken, and I could see the memories firing in her mind about that's such and such a place, so that's such and such a place there. And it was that game has a unique ability to sort of globally inspire that kind of thing in potentially, I don't know where it's actually mapped to. I don't know if you could fly over a remote part of Russia and it would still be I
think they've got most places. I mean, obviously it's filled in generically, so they don't have good imaging of North Korea.
Although I was going to say though, flying over North Korea is quite interesting though.
This is the thing they were talking about though in the interview. I don't think this bit went to print, but the chap who's the boss of Flight Sim, he was talking about how you've got governments that have typically been very closed. starting to, for various reasons, open up their satellite data. And so he was saying they're really excited because he was saying, we just got an email last week from such and such a country, a very secretive country that you wouldn't expect, where they're revealing their data. So we're getting ready to integrate it. We're really excited. And that's what I mean about, hopefully, eventually you're going to be able to go anywhere. And obviously when you fly close to the ground, you do realize that it's only the broad shape. It's like my house doesn't look like the shape of my house, or whatever. Yeah. But over time, that's going to get there.
It's just going to get filled in and filled in.
It's a fascinating.
I do love the idea that Kim Jong Un is like, no, I want to fly over Pyongyang. Right? Send them the data. All right, okay, Tom.
I already know where this is fucking going.
I mean, not necessarily.
Give me a chance. I had to listen to you two talking about that boring flying game for about half an hour. Clearly it's going to win, right? Flight Simulator is going to win. Just let me have my moment. Right, so I think I'm going to lose out on a technicality here, probably. But when this topic was presented to me by Jim, and I was like immediately in Slack saying, "This is shit. Why have you picked this?"
Yeah.
My thought immediately was during I went to the lockdown period as well, and what I did during lockdown for a lot of my spare time in the evenings was combine Rightmove with Google Maps. And I was like looking around because I was like, I could move to, I don't know, Leeds, retire earlier. That sounds good. I don't really want to work. Yeah. And at the time, all the estate agents were really big on virtual tours, right? They'd have proper 3D tours of houses. And I'd spend far too long walking through these houses. There's a cellar down there. You click the little arrow, go down the cellar. They've got a little office out. That's nice, isn't it? And I'd look on Google Maps to see the street. And they've got an Audi parked over there. That sounds like quite a nice area, right? I'd do a proper assessment. I'd never got further than looking. Even though I made massive amounts of effort to assess these areas, and if I could actually live there, and if the people there were like my level in terms of class. So I did a lot of that kind of stuff, and it was like surprisingly fun in a way because you get to say, this person's got an Xbox One, an original Xbox One. That's a shame, isn't it? And you'd see it there, and they might have a couple of copies of FIFA on top of it. That kind of thing. You get a slight insight into those houses. Yeah, it's not. And I thought this is quite good. It's got a good answer, but it's not really globe-trotting, is it? Like going slightly up to like Middle England.
If you went to France, then you could have.
I didn't really consider that. If I had done, I'd probably be winning this podcast, but I didn't.
How far do you have to go for it to be globe-trotting?
I don't know, but like,
I think I would say France or Ireland. Yeah,
I think you have to leave the UK probably. But then I thought, globe-trotting. And I thought, I'm going to get one over all of you because you're going to go like boring, like Flight Simulator or that kind of game where you just, I'm just flying around. Look, it's a landmark. How exciting! I'll actually go like actually places that I have been and played this game, right? So I was thinking, I've played this game I thought for a while, I've played it in Paris, I've played it in Cologne, I've played it in Bognor, Croydon, and like that's at least two of those are outside of the UK, right? And then and the game, you may be amazed to hear, is Football Manager.
I'm impressed with how you haven't got on the angle of World Cup, Champions League.
That's too simple, right? I wanted to actually make a point that I've played this game in other countries, right? Not just I haven't just like I've got a game in the Champions League in like Spain. That's easy, right? I've actually had a laptop with me in other countries or a phone for Manager Mobile, and I've played it in other countries, right?
So you have actually globetrotted with this game, as opposed to...
As much as I said Flight Simulator should win, I've thought about it in the last few seconds, and I think I should win.
It's amazing though, because football games, like in FIFA particularly, there is quite a nice aspect when you go to different stadiums and you're like, like I'm at the San Siro or I'm somewhere else.
Oh, don't help him. Don't help him.
That
Don't
would be
encourage
good.
him.
But at Football Manager, you don't really see the stadiums of the way I play it. It's just
Tom
overhead.
refuses to put the 3D.
Yeah, Tom only plays in the
Match
2D
engine on.
view because he needs to pretend it's 1997.
Before we decide a winner, I just want to throw a slight spanner in the works. So what about fantasy worlds? Because we mentioned Mass Effect earlier, but I was thinking about, I mean, there was Oblivion, but like, other fantasy games like The Witcher, because like, I know it's not our world, but they're kind of worlds I want to be in. And I feel like they juice them up to the level where they're like idealistic representations of those biomes. All the biomes are surprisingly squashed into one very small continent, and I don't know how they make that happen. But it's like you go to the most verdant forest, or you go to the most sort of idyllic oasis like Sahara, like desert, or you go to, I don't know if a desert is idyllic. I don't know if those two things come together.
I get if it's if it's got a few pools of water around and ice cream trucks and stuff, it can be, I guess.
Well, that's that Zelda thing, right? Like, Zelda's the one that I think of when I think stuff like that. I think straight back to Ocarina of Time in particular, where that felt like a complete world, and it felt like you travelled across the whole of it, even though it's like by modern standards the size of a postage stamp. Yeah,
I think it is an interesting point though, because a lot of as you say, Bertie, a lot of game worlds are really truncated, and you get the snowy peaks like smashed right next to like the tundra, and then the forest, and then the beach, and it's it's not, they don't even make in a lot of games, they don't even make any attempt to have these places kind of gradually fade into one another. It's literally like you can just jump between sort of desert and snow. But
this has made me think of a really good one. Shit.
But I think
just triggered a thought.
We had a conversation on Slack earlier about how I like, if somebody had pitched Final Fantasy 15 for this, I think I would accept it, because like, it's a road trip. It's about, I guess, global travel of a sort, not necessarily our globe, but a planet.
The one I just thought of, and it's based on the box art for the game, and it's an element of the game artistically where this conceit is only present on the box art, so that's the only way you'd know. But the concept of Mario 64 is when you're jumping into the paintings, you're going to different parts of the planet. And that's only present in, not even the box art in the West, but in the Japanese box art and key art. It's physically a globe with all the levels on it.
Oh, nice.
Actually, Mario Odyssey would not be a bad one for this either.
Mario Odyssey, you literally see like the globe. Oh. Mario Odyssey is the Final Fantasy 15 and Mario games, isn't it? All right, okay. I need to pick something now, so we're going to play the Pick Something jingle. And you might have also heard an advert if that bit's working. Never get the mid-roll adverts. I never get them. I've never heard one. Not a single one. Tom, I love once again how you have crowbarred Football Manager into the topic at hand. But
this one wasn't. It didn't need that much of a crowbar. In fairness to him,
no, exactly. No. Actually, this is actually a fairly legitimate entry.
I had to give you that other story about my travels. Because otherwise, I'd just gone Football Manager. You go and play in Spain. I mean, boring.
Football Manager. I was once in charge of the Dutch league. Yeah, exactly. So like legitimate choice. But as you've told us in the past, you don't play in the 3D match engine, and so your experience playing Football Manager, your experience of a match in Wembley versus a match in, I don't know, some other stadium somewhere else.
I was bloody sat in Paris playing this. I literally could see the Eiffel Tower. Like, how is that not globetrotting, Jim?
Bertie could have been sat playing Alpha Protocol on a plane.
He may have been. He didn't say he was. He didn't say he was. Alex presumably was on his own in an office.
Wouldn't make any difference whatsoever. I tell you what, I love Microsoft Flight Simulator, and the first thing I did, as everyone did, was crash a plane into their own house, just to confirm it was there. It was great, and I remember Alice walking into the room and saying, "If you just, I might cut this bit out," but she was like, "You've 9/11'd our flat." Like, yeah, 9/11 the flat. You got a 9/11 something, right?
Norm MacDonald has broke my brain, because someone could just say that now and I just laugh.
Yeah.
Ray, rest in peace.
You heard of 9/11?
It's one of the funniest bits.
We're going to get complaints about that, aren't we, Tom? But I have to say, the Microsoft Flight Simulator is a great choice. Like, before we went to our as a lot of people in Britain, our sort of first post-pandemic holiday was to Portugal. Because it's right on the doorstep, it's relatively cheap, and it was one of the few places that was letting us in at the time. And so we went there for a week, and it was like an incredible trip. We're like, this is a wonderful country. But we went to, I loaded it up on Microsoft Flight Simulator first and flew around the Sintra Palace and stuff like that. And it's like, this is great. It's such a great tool for digital tourism in the most like pure sense. But I'm going to give it to Bertie.
Yes!
I knew this was going to happen.
I'm going to give it to Bertie.
No, just before you carry on, right?
It's because I wore a jacket. I wore a jacket.
That game is not good, right? It's not a good game.
I heavily dispute that.
Bertie wasn't even sure where he went in that game. He was like, you may have gone to here, may
he
have gone
listed
there.
off every single location correctly.
As much as like, I don't want Alex to win either, this game is like at least a quality experience where you actually travel the world. And
I can accept it.
The world.
I can accept it because as soon as Bertie even said the spy thing, I was like, fuck, I knew what it was. And I was like, that's a really good pick, actually.
I could see Alex's heart sinking, like, oh, he's got this.
It's the spy fantasy.
Sega published as well, so Alex loyalties lie there as well. But the thing is, you do travel the world in Alpha Protocol, and it's like, especially because it came out not long after this series was finished. If you were a big fan of Alias, the J.J. Abrams globe-trotting spy TV show, which was, I mean, you know, on a budget. Like, they once did an episode in London, and it was clearly London, Ontario that they were filming in quite hilariously. That's a great show, and it felt like somebody had made
very
Mass
much of its
Effect,
time.
but Alias, yeah.
Because, like, I still think it's one of the greatest marketing pitches and most memorable marketing pitches for any game ever. Where when they were describing their interview soundbite that they would repeatedly give, describing the choices in the game, were like, we're not doing light or dark like Star Wars or Paragon or Renegade. They were like, we're doing the 3 JBs: James Bond, Jack Bauer, or Jason Bourne. And those are your 3 sort of styles. And like suave.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Like,
you forget how big that spy genre was when Bourne was in full swing, you know. And
this was when 24 was at its height as well, right? Like,
Joe Bauer's just biting a rat.
That's the thing. The Jack Bauer option was always to just brutalize them. In that classic neocon way.
Yeah, the conservative wet dream. So like Alpha Protocol is a brilliant game. You do you do trot the globe. Like, you go, as you said, Bertie, you go to Moscow, you go to Rome, you go to Taipei, you start off in Saudi Arabia. There's a big opening bit in some CIA base in America somewhere, isn't there? It's like, you know, that's 5 countries. That constitutes a globe trot, I reckon. That's a pretty extensive globe trot.
You get to go there again and again because you've got a safe house there. So it's not just a holiday. You can
still actually travel around when you're. You don't just do the Rome bit and then go to.
You can go back for side quests and stuff, and sometimes it's required.
I need to pop back to Rome.
Didn't it have in Rome? Wasn't there a really weird conversation with like the owner of a pizza shop or a gelato shop or something, and you had to play it off. You had to be cool. You didn't want to spook them or something. I just remember a pizza shop or a gelato shop, and there was an odd conversation. And that, I mean, come on, that's globetrotting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, you even get ice cream. So well, look, Alpha Protocol, Bertie, thank you for being our first ever guest from outside the world of VG247.
Thanks for having me on.
An ambassador for our esteemed colleagues at Eurogamer. Who, by the way, whoever it is at Eurogamer, it keeps leaving us duff reviews on Apple. Tell them to stop, will you? Unless it's you. Alpha Protocol is very well played. The best globe-trotting game as far as we're concerned. Thank you so much for listening, watching. Please leave us a 5-star review. A 5-star review on any podcast platform of your choice, and leave us comments and suggest alternative topics, or tell us we're all talking rubbish, and give us your own answers for what this topic would be, or just complain that Tom was robbed once again, which seems to be the usual refrain for every single episode. Even like 12 episodes into the Football Manager era. So all right, well, thank you very much. We're just going to leave you now. Bye. No, to end these things. Bye.